It's a constant topic of discussion within MMA circles, and one that's always in a state of movement. Which divisions have the strongest rosters, the strongest top 10s, the best fights, the greatest champion pound for pound, when it comes to their placement in relation to other weight classes? Well, let's not waste any more time. Here's our definitive ranking of every UFC division, at least for now. Number 11, women's flyweight. Do the flyweights suffer because of the presence of a dominant champion in Valentina Shevchenko, or are they merely experiencing growing pains due to their status as the newest division in the sport? Well, either way, even if the 125-pounders have their fair share of promising talents, it's pretty safe to say that it's the division that holds the least public interest in the sport. I expect that to change in the future, of course, but for now, the flyweights unfortunately find themselves rooted to the bottom in 11th place. Number 10, women's bantamweight. Next up is another division that is, or at least was, suffering from the presence of an incredibly dominant champion. Bantamweight has indeed crowned a new queen with the arrival of the major underdog Juliana Pena, but through the best years of Amanda Nunes's reign, it was pretty fair to say that the division's age was showing. There was a real lack of high-level contenders breaking through, and though Pena's unlikely capture of the belt was a shock, we won't know how much of a shake-up there will be at 135 pounds just yet. Perhaps it's a division that will rise higher over the coming months and years, as a new wave potentially moves in, but it certainly has its work cut out. Number 9, light heavyweight. Once the real money division of the UFC, 205 pounds has kinda drifted into a real middling level over the years. Gone now are the days of Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. Instead, especially after the departure of the longtime champion John Jones, we have more of an aging division. Sure, it does seem like there's a new generation that are finally making a dent, guys like the champion Jiri Prochazka and the incoming force that is Magomed Ankalaev, but until we see the old totally displaced by the young, light heavyweight, in my opinion, will remain the weakest men's division in the sport. Yeah, it has one of the most electric champions, but out of all of the weight classes we will list here, I expect 205 to undergo the biggest shift over the next 2 or 3 years. Number 8, flyweight. Flyweight may be coming in the bottom half, but don't mistake that for it being in bad health. If anything, the 125-pound division has come on in leaps and bounds since the days of Demetrius Johnson, the days that almost led to it being cut entirely from the UFC roster. The two top dogs in the division, the champion Davison Figueiredo and the former champion Brandon Moreno, have done some excellent work in letting the general public know that these flyweights can in fact bring the action, but I suppose what I need to see from the rest of the division is for the contenders, guys like Kai Kara France, Brandon Royval, Mateusz Nicolau, Manel Kopp, for these guys to break on through and put some real pressure on the top two. Even prospects like Mohamed Mokaev and Jeffrey Molina, who have yet to actually break into the top 10, they give me some real hope that there is a major golden era coming at flyweight. So for now, they fall in at number 8, but things have truly never been better for the lightest male division. Number 7, women's strawweight. Women's strawweight has been the standout female division for years now, and even with the bizarre and pretty terrible matchup that saw an unlikely champion crowned in Carla Esparza, it remains the strongest of the bunch. And even when you put the known contenders to one side, the likes of Rose Namajunas, Zhang Weili, and Jessica Andrade, there is a wealth of promising rising prospects, and you've certainly got a lot of talented fighters within that top 15 who are actively beating each other, actively ending each other's win streaks, and keeping a solid level of movement present in the upper levels. Over the next year, I expect the likes of Marina Rodriguez, Mackenzie Dern, and Luana Pinheiro to break through, and of course, do not be surprised to see the title switch hands once again. But for now, even if it's short on stability, 115 pounds finds its way to 7th place, remaining a strong one, and certainly one to watch. On a quick side note, if you're enjoying this content and would like to stay up to date with all of our weekly uploads, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and maybe just to mix things up, leave us a comment to let us know exactly what type of content you'd like to see more of on MMA Dive. We also have a Patreon account, so if you want to help in supporting the channel, there is a link in the description. Number 6, middleweight. The middleweight division certainly isn't the force it was when guys like Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold, Jacare Souza, Gegard Mousasi, and Yoel Romero were in their prime. But like flyweight, I do get the sense that there is a change in the works at 185. The champion Israel Adesanya and the top contender Robert Whittaker have certainly singled themselves out as the two greatest fighters in the weight class, and by some distance. And I do rate the likes of Marvin Vettori and Paulo Costa to a higher degree than most. Just like I think that Alex Pereira jumping into the top 5 is actually quite interesting. And there are some strong prospects here that will make 185 pounds pretty interesting over the coming year. You've got the submission skills of Andre Muniz, the chaos of Dricus du Plessis, the total wildcard that is Chris Curtis, and when you couple all of this with the presence of two pound-for-pound greats at the very top of the rankings, it's only a matter of time before the middle areas of this division sort themselves out. Number 5, heavyweight. Jump back a few years and there would be very little chance of seeing heavyweight in the top 5. But as I've said on many occasions on this channel, I'm truly glad to see the big men finally finding their way into what looks to be a new era. For years, it seemed like the Overeems, the JDSs and the Arlovskis of the division would never be pushed aside. And though to be fair to him, the evergreen Andrei Arlovski is still somehow hanging around and on a 4-5 win streak, there has certainly been a real changing of the guard at heavyweight. Francis Ngannou is the type of champion that Dana White was probably praying for years, up until of course they had a major falling out. You've also got the likes of Cyril Gane, Tom Aspinall, Tai Tuivasa, with the tried and tested Stipe Miocic, Curtis Blades and Derek Lewis hanging around the top. Scatter in a couple of strong prospects, as well as the looming presence of John Jones, and you've got yourself the strongest heavyweight lineup in years. Number 4, welterweight. Up next are the welterweights, the good old trustworthy 170-pounders who never do seem to fall too far from the top. And of course, while the division is also in something of a transition, I would argue that they have perhaps the best, or at the very least, the most interesting rising contenders of any weight class. Obviously, Khamzat Chimaev gets the first nod, but then you have Shavkat Rakhmonov, who in my opinion is easily just as intriguing a talent as Chimaev. Then Sean Brady, Vicente Luque and Bilal Mohammed are all one major statement away from really making a dent in the title picture. Of course, at the very peak, the pound-for-pound king Kamaru Usman and the divisional number 2 Colby Covington are just about as good a 1-2 combo as you could ever hope for. Veterans like Gilbert Burns, Jorge Masvidal and Stephen Thompson still bring pretty huge appeal, and the next challenger for the belt, Leon Edwards, is perhaps the most underrated fighter on the roster today. 170 is definitely in a good place. Only time will tell just how much it can capitalize on its clear promise. Number 3, featherweight. Another huge number 1 and number 2 pairing come up next in the featherweight division, but to boil the quality of the 145-pounders down to just Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski would be to miss the real consistency that exists below. Prospects like Ilia Topuria, Sodiq Yusuff, Movsar Evloev, Arnold Allen, and Bryce Mitchell deserve to be taken very seriously, but for me, it's the amount of legitimately elite talents who are coming off of losses that could really shake things up here. Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez, Giga Shikadze, Calvin Kattar, and even Korean Zombie. These are all excellent fighters. Guys who make up a top 15 that is incredibly easy on the eye. In my opinion, this division contains the greatest fighter in the sport right now, its champion Volkanovski. But no matter which side of the Kamaru Usman-Alexander Volkanovski argument you fall on, 145 pounds is definitely a top 3 weight class in the UFC. Number 2, lightweight. Okay, so here's the big one. I bet most of you would have picked the 155-pound division for number 1, and trust me, based off of the strength of some of the insane rising contenders who have recently made a major step in their own rise, I did almost change my vote. But for my money, this number 2 pick is the Robert Whittaker to the number 1's Israel Adesanya. There's an argument for lightweight as the greatest division in the sport, absolutely. It has the insanely dangerous champion in Charles Oliveira, a wealth of excellent veterans in Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, Rafael dos Anjos, but it's the upcoming prospects at 155 pounds that are really catching my eye. And though I've already said that welterweight has maybe 2 of the best prospects in the entire sport, lightweight has Fiziev, Makachev, Gamrot, Tsaryukian, Kutateladze, Usmagulov, and Jalen Turner, and these guys are closing in fast. So even though 155 pounds misses out on the top spot, I don't expect it to stay at number 2 for long, especially if all continues to trend in this direction. Number 1, bantamweight. And finally we come to number 1. A controversial pick perhaps, but one that I stand behind. Bantamweight is absolutely stacked to the brim with talent. From the elite of the elite to the unranked up-and-comers. I think the most technical MMA right now, on average, is happening in the 135-pound division. And man, the balance of personnel in this weight class is just so on point. You have the veterans, an all-star lineup of Jose Aldo, TJ Dillashaw, Dominic Cruz, and even Frankie Edgar. Then you have the guys who have yet to reach the top. Merab Dvalishvili, Sean O'Malley, Song Yadong, Jack Shore, Adrian Yanez, Marlon Vera, Umar Nurmagomedov. Then you have established guys guys like Corey Sandhagen, the former champion Petr Yan, who was easily one of the best 6 or 7 fighters in the sport pound for pound, even without his belt, and then the surprise champion himself, Aljamain Sterling, who proved so many of us wrong with how well he dealt with the huge favourite that was Petr Yan. An incredible lineup, and even if it was a close one, Bantamweight manages to win it by a hair. But what do you think is the greatest division in the UFC today? And do you agree with our choices? Do let us know your opinions in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.